Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service. And let's see.
So this thing is not going to have any impact on the Facebook Live, right?
No.
It's only going to have an impact on Zoom.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have to next fix that. We did 20, so we are doing from text 21. So first canto, second chapter, text 21. I'm going to share the screen. And then I'm going to start the recording. Okay. Vidyate hridaya granthes Siddhyante sarva samshayaha Chiyante chasya Karmani drishta evatmanishvare.
Thus the knot in the heart is pierced and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as master. So we've been talking about karma, right? So this is a good purport to read. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Attaining scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead means seeing one's own self simultaneously. As far as the identity of the living being as spirit self is concerned, there are a number of speculations and misgivings. The materialist does not believe in the existence of the spirit self, and empiric philosophers believe in the impersonal feature of the whole spirit without individuality of the living beings. But the transcendentalists affirm that the soul and the supersoul are two different identities, qualitatively one but quantitatively different. There are many other theories, but all these different speculations are at once cleared off as soon as Sri Krishna is realized in truth by the process of Bhakti Yoga. Sri Krishna is like the sun, and the materialistic speculations about the absolute truth are like the darkest midnight. As soon as the Krishna sun is arisen within one's heart, the darkness of materialistic speculations about the absolute truth and the living beings is at once cleared off. In the presence of the sun, the darkness cannot stand, and the relative truths that were hidden within the dense darkness of ignorance become clearly manifested by the mercy of Krishna, who is residing in everyone's heart as the Supersoul.
In the Bhagavad Gita 10:11, the Lord says that in order to show special favor to His pure devotees, He personally eradicates the dense darkness of the misgivings by switching on the light of pure knowledge within the heart of a devotee. I think should come a little bit closer. So maybe put the chair just a little bit on the side, then you can also come closer.
Okay, I'll just go back.
Therefore, because of the personality of Godhead taking charge of illuminating the heart of his devotee, certainly a devotee engaged in his service in transcendental love cannot remain in darkness. He comes to know everything of the absolute and the relative truths. The devotee cannot remain in darkness, and because the devotee is enlightened by the personality of Godhead, his knowledge is certainly perfect. This is not the case for those who speculate on the absolute truth by dint of their own limited power of approach. Perfect knowledge is called parampara, or deductive knowledge coming down from the authority to the submissive oral receiver who is bona fide by service and surrender. One cannot challenge the authority of the Supreme and know Him also at the same time.
I like that sentence.
One cannot challenge the authority of the Supreme and know Him also at the same time. He reserves the right of not being exposed to such a challenging spirit of an insignificant spark of the whole, a spark subjected to the control of illusory energy. The devotees are submissive, and therefore the transcendental knowledge descends from the personality of Godhead to Brahma and from Brahma to his sons and disciples in succession. This process is helped by the super soul within such devotees. That is a perfect way of learning transcendental knowledge. This enlightenment perfectly enables the devotee to distinguish spirit from matter, because the knot of spirit and matter is untied by the Lord. This knot is called ahankara, and it falsely obliges a living being to become identified with matter. As soon as this knot is loosened, therefore, all the clouds of doubt are at once cleared off. One sees his master and fully engages himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, making a full termination of the chain of fruitive action. In material existence, a living being creates his own chain of fruitive work and enjoys the good and bad effects of those actions life after life. But as soon as he engages himself in the loving service of the Lord, he at once becomes free from the chain of karma. His actions no longer create any reaction. That's something we discussed in our last Friday class. So this is a very important verse in the Bhagavatam about the effect of devotional service. So the previous verses we talked about the scientific knowledge, right? Evam prasanna manaso bhagat bhakti yogata. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. And the effect of that positive scientific knowledge is given this Vidyate Hridaya Granthi. Yes,
No, I'm not saying something.
So this, I think there are few important words in this verse. Hridaya Granthi is one, Sarva Samshaya, and then Drishta Evatmanishware, that one can see the self as the master. It's very interesting translation Prabhupada makes. When one sees self as the master. So maybe we can discuss this verse a little bit more.
I was just
Not
reading.
in the heart.
I just wanted to make a point, like that's why I wanted to, like this morning when I was reading my Bhagavatam, so in 11th canto when Krishna is speaking to Uddhava, he actually speaks just like Arjuna, right? He tells him about all the different ways in which he's the opulence, like, he's the best of this and he's the best of that. So he says, it's so interesting, he says, among the 8 progressive states of yoga, I am the final stage, samadhi, in which the soul is completely separated from illusion. Among those desiring victory, I am prudent political counsel, and among processes of expert discrimination, I am the science of the soul, by which one distinguishes spirit from matter. And then this last sentence is most interesting. It says, among all speculative philosophers, I am diversity of perception.
Wow. Among all speculative philosophers, I am diversity of perception.
So here Prabhupada is talking about how there are so many speculations and misgivings. So just thinking that, it's amazing that even, and Prabhupada, and in the purport it is described that how all forgetfulness, knowledge and remembrance comes from Krishna. So in that way, he gives different people different perceptions according to their desires.
Wow.
So Hridaya Granthi, I know you were talking about that.
So I just wanted to discuss a little bit more about Hridaya Granthi and misgivings. What is Hridaya Granthi? Has anybody experienced this Hridaya Granthi? And then what does it look like? What does it feel like? Do we understand what is being spoken here?
But I think that's a good discussion. Have you experienced it?
Yeah, let's see if anybody has experienced this Hridaya Granthi.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Radhika Nam in Madhurari. You
Yes.
experience it every day.
What way?
I think you don't know, but you know that Krishna is the ultimate, but you don't know how to go about it. There is something in the heart which feels very disconnected. You know, if this is dissolved, then life will be much lighter and easier. But you don't to actually dissolve this knot all by yourself. And I think it is happening because with chanting, the kindness that you experience in your heart is the dissolving of that knot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, is it the Artha Bhav with the, is it something of Artha Bhav that we have, with from the bottom of our heart, we just try to remember Krishna?
we are talking about Hriday Granthi. Are you saying that what is the connection with Hriday Granthi and Artha Bhav? What is Artha Bhav?
Yeah. So Hriday Granthi produces the Artha Bhav, right? I'm just trying to put
What is the meaning of Artha Bhav?
Because I don't see that here in the verse, so if you can explain.
No. Artha Bhav is
A desire for enjoyment?
no.
Artha means distressed.
Artha means half.
Arti, Artharthi and Jignati, right?
Oh, Artha Jigyasu. Artha means like in great distress.
Oh, yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So, out of these three, I was thinking like Artha Bhav is the one which gets created through Hriday Granthi.
No. Hriday Granthi is different. I mean, Hriday Granthi is this false ego that I am this body, I am matter.
And that leads to distress, though, right?
That leads to all kinds of distress.
Yeah. So this knot in the heart is something that, like Radhika Nam was saying, right? We all experience it. It's like this deep attachment, right? This deep knot, and it just feels like so tight, and we feel so helpless in the face of that attachment, and we are driven by it, and we're tossed around by it, right?
Like Vishishika Prabhu gives the example, like if our car is parked outside the house and we hear a banging noise, then we have a thunderbolt in our own heart, right? That is it my car? So that anything we are attached to is going to create a thunderbolt whenever that thing is damaged or in danger.
But I guess the deeper question is that sometimes we don't want that knot in the heart to be pierced, right? Because we like that knot. So let's unpack it a little bit more. What do you guys think about this knot in the heart?
Yeah, Vidarbha?
Yeah.
Can I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was thinking that for me the knot in the heart is like there's a lot of expectation from this material world. We hear so many things from the scriptures and from the lectures and from the books that this is a very bad place and it's full of suffering. But still, I know that in my heart there's a lot of expectation that I may get happiness, maybe things I'm looking for, maybe I'll get down the line or in future, maybe I need to work in a different way to get it. I mean, though I know the philosophy, but the realization of it that it's actually a bad place and one is not supposed to invest so much. It's like a knot in my heart, and it is so tight that it seems impossible that it will break or even dilute someday.
So false expectations of future, anticipation of future happiness, although we know it's not possible. Thank you. Anybody else?
Sorry, Prabhu, actually my internet connection got disconnected. So I was saying something like I feel like it's many times actually I see that something is a false ego pretty evident. It's pretty evident, I know it, but the thing is actually I cannot overcome it. So and it's a knot. So that is what I feel.
Very nice.
That's a very good example, that a knot that we can see, then we can try to work on unknotting it. But if we can't see, then it's a true knot.
Yeah. And anyways, let's stop. I wanted to make a point.
Prabhu, Priyanka here.
Yeah.
I think my knot, there are several, of course, which we don't even know, but I have this control issue that I want to control things wherever and however possible. That's and it leads to frustration because everything may, or in this material world, of course, we are not the controllers, we understand that, but in this material world, we try to, wherever our hands reach, we try to control the situation. But so that's the biggest one that I can think of in this time.
Thank you. That's a real one.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, so this So this false ego, what happens is, personally I've felt and I've heard is that it's very difficult to detect because it is not in the purview even of our intelligence. What I've understood is that because the false ego is beyond our intelligence. So the first element that was put when the jivas came into the material creation was false ego, and after that only the mind intelligence, and then all the subtle body elements came into the picture. So the false ego is even beyond our intelligence, even during creation. So even with our intelligence, we cannot perceive our false ego. So that's why it is understood that somebody beyond, like a spiritual master or Krishna, can only by their mercy the false ego can be identified and subdued. That's what Prabhupada is trying to explain. The purport also is that Krishna, he's referencing Guru Gita, he's the one who can ultimately subdue this false ego by illuminating the light of knowledge, and only through disciplic succession, if we try to cultivate that, there is even a chance for us to subdue the false ego.
Very nice point, Prabhu. That's how Ankara is beyond our intelligence, and we can't clean it on our own. We need superior help.
Sometimes, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm at a very lower stage. I'm still struggling with sense gratification, sense enjoyment. That's the biggest problem that I feel, like struggling with my senses and always like trying to satisfy them instead of me controlling my senses, getting controlled by my senses. I'm not reached to the mind and intelligence stage yet. So that's the biggest part that I feel.
Yeah, this knot is sometimes, we experience this, right? Like especially in India, sometimes you get a pajama or something, and then you tie a knot, and the knot becomes really, really hard, and there is no way that we can actually use our hands to kind of loosen it up or to open it up, right? So then the only thing you can do is you have to take a pair of scissors or something and you cut it off, right? So I was just thinking that in a similar way, this knot, like Vivek Prabhu was saying, is so subtle and it's so beyond the realm of the intelligence, and it's so tight. Countless lifetime after lifetime, there is more additional stuff, that has tightened that knot. And in this current life, Prabhupada talks about how our attachment to our body and those that are related to our body, right? So we get married, we have children, right? And then we have expansions of our children. And so in this way, the knot keeps getting more and more tight.
And then what happens is our knot gets tied with the knots of others. So it becomes like a one big jumbo knot.
Yeah. And in Bhagavad Gita also Krishna is saying, right, that using the axe of knowledge, cut down this tree, which no one knows where the roots are and where the branches, how far beyond the branches extend, right? So similar way, like our ahankara and its expansions, they are distributed, they're unlimited.
And they're also going back to our millions of previous lifetimes. So it's not just this lifetime, this knot is, the roots are going far back.
Yeah. So there's no way that, we can use any process, just like I was reading just yesterday, that if you want to purify gold which is mixed with other metals, then just washing it with soap and water will not help. So you need to put it in fire, and only then that gold can be purified. So in the same way, this knot is so hardened, we can't use a soft, easy method to break that knot. It has to be cut by this transcendental knowledge.
And that's why Prabhupada is saying that the path of empiric philosophers or the speculative knowledge or even the karma rituals and things like that, they are not powerful enough to, maybe they will cut the knot in one or two places, but this knot is like a giant root structure that you just can't get rid of. And if you cut it in one place, like Ravana's head, you cut it in one place, it again comes out, even much stronger.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like a mutating virus.
So I have a question. This is a good time about this phrase, seeing the self as master.
We will come to that.
We'll come to that.
We'll come to that part. Yes. Anybody else not in the heart? And then maybe go ahead.
This is Sashi again.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, of course, we all reflected upon the negative things of the relationship with the matter, but matter can also come in a way that our connection to other people, humanity, empathy, in the relationships that we have with other people is also kind of a connection to the matter, right? Relationship to the matter. And these are actually good things that you have, that makes you better because you are connected to other people, and that also makes your a knot in your heart that other people's suffering makes you feel very disputed about your own existence and everything. So which are all, empathy in general is a good thing. So should we also cut it down?
Great question.
Is a virtue of soul in general. So that connection to the matter which comes in form of the compassion and humanity, how do is that supposed to be negative, and should we cut it out of our life?
So let's see, somebody wants to answer that question from our room here. Anybody want to?
We have so many. Swarna, yeah, go ahead.
So I think that you should just you shouldn't like cut it out entirely. It's kind of like desires. You can't get rid of desires. You just have to turn them from material to spiritual. So instead of being doing material empathy and stuff, like oh no, this guy is in debt, I'm gonna give him some money. You should do spiritual. You should show spiritual empathy. Oh no, this guy needs to be helped in spiritual life. I'm gonna help him. You should be like that.
Okay, that's nice.
Thank you, Swarna.
Thank you, Swarna. Anybody else? Let's see. So many of your Bhakti Shastri students are here.
Yeah. Who wants to answer? Bhakti Lata, Shringaras, who else is there? Nikunja, anybody? Take an attempt. This is a very good question.
Hare Krishna. Actually, I didn't completely understand the question, but Hridaya Granthis, I think most of what others covered already covers my points. That it is basically the attachment that you have for your friends and relations from lifetime to lifetime. Those are the knots.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So that means, as someone already explained, those knots cannot be cut by ourselves. It's only by Krishna's grace that can happen. For that, we need to beg Him.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe we can answer it.
Yeah, so compassion and empathy for others, that is quality of the soul, and that is manifest when the soul is in the mode of goodness, and then more and more as we come to the transcendental plane, then the compassion and the mercy and empathy for others, it will manifest even more and more. Another aspect of bhakti is that in the mature stage, there is no difference between compassion and prema, or love of God. So cutting the knot doesn't mean that we cut the compassion and cut the empathy. Rather, we increase it. We see everybody as connected to God and see their suffering, and their suffering is our suffering, and that is the real nature of the soul.
And actually, matter restricts our ability to offer real compassion. And case in point being that because of this body, right? I have a certain relationship with this body, and I have a certain relationship with my family members, or with my community, or with my country, or members of my species, because the center point is my body, right? So in that way, my idea of compassion is very, very limited. I might be just compassionate to people of my community, or compassionate to people of the human race. But because the center point of a person who's connected spiritually is actually God or Krishna, so in that way the whole universe actually is accommodated within this this feeling of compassion. So So spiritual life does not mean giving up compassion and empathy, but actually expanding the realm of our compassion and empathy by including everyone, because everyone is part of that spiritual source, right? It's the trees also. And so that's why we see sometimes religionists or moralists, they will come up with some kind of a plan to maybe save the dolphins, but maybe after they have saved the dolphins, they'll go for a meal and they will eat a chicken, right? So their compassion is very narrow. They're saving one thing, but they don't understand the relationship of everything to that supreme source. And therefore, when we become spiritual, we don't give up compassion, we just make it very vast, because everything is part and parcel of Krishna. There is nothing in this universe which is not part of Krishna.
And in the materialistic conception of compassion, even in the compassionate act, I am the center. Like Prabhupada says, Krishna is like the Suhrida Sarvabhutanam. He's the true friend of all living entities. So when we extend compassion from limited conception, then there's at the center of it is me, and that compassion therefore has there's hidden motives, consciously or subconsciously, and it has very limited impact. So compassion, when considering Krishna in the center, when that kind of compassion is extended, that actually benefits ourselves and that benefits the receiver, and it's a permanent benefit that everybody gets. So yeah, compassion needs to be expanded, the bottom line is.
I don't know, Shashi Prabhu, if you have any further thoughts on that.
No, it actually helps. As far as I understand now, is that the compassion that we exhibit is centered with me. It's my-centric.
Yes.
But to expand it through Krishna as the center of compassion, that's more relevant than what I exhibit, which is more selfish, because that completely impacts me. That one of my close one is in trouble, that happens to me is revolved around me rather than the Krishna. That I understand that. So we need to expand that to make it Krishna as the center of that humanity.
Thank you.
You summarized it so well.
Yeah, you summarized it very well. And so I guess the second point, I find it even more fascinating, that what happens, because ultimately, we are only interested in doing something when we know, what is it going to lead to, right? What kind of freedom is awaiting me when I cut this knot? And so the translation says all misgivings are cut to pieces. So what are these misgivings that are so painful for us, and what are those misgivings that will all disappear once this knot is pierced? Because then we have an impetus to actually apply ourselves to this process of cutting this knot.
This is like giving us the destination, right?
Yeah.
What the destination?
What are the misgivings? Go ahead, guys.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, go ahead. I think I heard Nikunja. I don't know who it was before that.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
The question is simply that what are the misgivings? Like, in this translation it is said that when the knot is pierced, then misgivings are destroyed. So what are those misgivings that are cut to pieces?
Right now I can only think of one that, like, whenever I do something, I think that I am controlling things. So
Okay.
I consider myself to be in a full control. I can control things around me.
Okay.
I may say that I'm not the controller, but when it comes to the family, I try to control.
Okay. And what does
in
that
one way or the other.
and what does that lead to? It leads to frustration, right? Anger and frustration. So that's
Yes.
okay. Very nice. Thank you. Yes, Premdam Sharam Bhakti.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
I was thinking of this verse which Guru Maharaj also quotes, I think it's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Kamadinam Kathina Kathida Palita Durnitesha. That from time immemorial I've been serving my senses, and these senses had not shown me any mercy. And now I'm praying that I just want to serve you. So I mean, just rolling into the circle of my senses, and I am, all these misgivings are like, my sense gratification, my desires, my attachment, a desire of power and recognition and pride and my intellect. All these things are my misgivings, which are not giving me the chance to become happy.
Very nice. Thank you.
Can somebody look up the word misgiving in the dictionary and see what it means?
While somebody's doing that, maybe Bhaktilata has something I think she wants to say.
Bhaktilata, go ahead.
Yeah. Also, the six misgivings of the mind are like, lust, anger, greed, illusion, fear, and
It says a feeling of doubt or apprehension about the outcome or consequences of something.
I see. Another meaning?
Filled with doubt, apprehension or foreboding.
Fear.
My heart.
Fear.
Fear, right? Doubt, apprehension, foreboding. Somebody asks this question, well, what's the problem with lust? It just means that I have lots of desires and I'm, it's great. I mean, I'm a person with, a zest for life, right? And somebody could say that about, envy even, right? And I have a competitive spirit, right? And I'm highly motivated. So what's wrong with that? So the point being that, these are all things that we talk about, but how does it affect me? My anger, how does it, what is it for me ultimately, right? My anger might be detrimental for someone else, but these misgivings, whether it is kama, lust, or it's anger, or it's envy, or it's even greed. Greed is actually beneficial for me, right? I accumulate, I collect, that's good for me. So why should this be a problem?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. I have one basic question.
Who is this? Anshul?
This is Anshul, yes.
Okay. Can we come back to you, Anshul? If this is not connected to this, we'll come back to you in a minute.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So anybody wants to take, reflect on this?
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
So anything that we do in material life which is not connected to Krishna, whether we collect more or we are envious or we are competitive or however way we rationalize it, but eventually the end result is there is no happiness. Even if we collect as much as we want to, but yet we are still frustrated, we are still angry, and we still want more and more, and there is no point where we feel satisfied. This is just very opposite to our life to our Krishna conscious life.
Yes, and a constant sense of fear, right? Misgiving, foreboding.
That what will happen?
What will happen?
Whether I will get there or not.
Yeah. Oh my God, this person, did better than me, or so much I have collected. But what if someone has an eye on that? What if? So like that, we're always in a state of stress, anxiety, and fear, right? So that's why when these misgivings are cut, then further along, right? So that's why
One more point, please.
Yes.
I was also thinking when we come from a material conception of life to this spiritual conception, and when we do our services, in the beginning, we are not, our intentions are not pure. But so in the beginning, we do come with that material conception also.
Yes.
That what's going to be the result, and we are in a state of anxiety, and that's not transcendental anxiety. That is purely material anxiety and material fear. Because at that point in time, because we are so result driven in the beginning that and we understand the philosophy, but we don't realize it so well that it's really it's very different. Material life and spiritual life are very different. So sometimes when we come with that conception, we can also experience that fear and anxiety in our spiritual life also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we don't see Krishna's hand like when we, in our material conception, we only see our hand. I can do everything with my hand. And what can I get in my hand? And when we start seeing Krishna's hand, then fortunately that anxiety and fear goes away.
Very nice. So, I don't know if there's anyone else, otherwise we can take Anshu's question. Radhika, you wanted to say something? Go ahead.
Yes. I am reminded of the example of that concentric circle. Because with too many people having them to become the controller, so then there is conflict because, like as Sashi Prabhu was also saying, the common goal is not that of Krishna. So even I aspire to become a lord of everything and everything is in my control, but still my heart will feel that misgiving because other people will not accept me as the Lord.
Yeah, Bhurijan Prabhu always says that the universe is always trying to dismantle, right, my sense of godhood. And we are trying to prove, right, everyone's trying to prove that I am Ishvara. It's interesting, Naji, we're going to come to that in the end it says when one sees the self as master, but that is the root cause of this ahankara, right, that one thinks that I am Ishvara, I am the controller. So we'll get to that in a minute. Anshul, go ahead.
Sure. So, not on the same, but maybe on the similar lines, I had this doubt. When we talk about the control, controlling is bad, and it's not good because everybody's trying to be controller. But from a different perspective, when someone wants to do something, like for example, I'm preparing to be a doctor, or I'm preparing to be I'm trying to get to a position in my organization, or when my kid is studying or doing something or in sports. So we always think and keep us motivated, okay, if you want, you can do anything. You control your destiny. Similar message we also provide to our kids to keep them motivated. If you want anything in life, you can do it. You can control by your actions. By your effort, you can achieve anything. That's what the message we always try to give. Now, how that controlling and try to control our destiny is different from this control, and is it still bad?
Very good question.
Such a good question.
Very good question. How much we control and how much we should motivate ourselves or children to control. Like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So that message is very clear that we can be driven by what we want, but just to be driven by the fruit, which is at all not in our control, can be very frustrating at times. And then that happens to many people. Sometimes we get what we want and then we think, oh, I got it. It's because of me that I got it. And when we don't get it, then we kind of tend to blame others, or maybe sometimes even God if we have some knowledge about Him. So we get tossed around like a yo-yo in this material world, trying to see ourselves as the only controller. And of course we have to do our best, like Arjuna was doing his best, but the motivation has to be different in terms of like being the best in whatever we are doing. The motivation is again Krishna centric, that I don't control the fruits, and even if I get the fruits, even if I become the best or whatever, what will I do with those fruits? So that conception has to be clear. And then I guess we are trying to be the best so we can please Krishna with whatever we achieve in our life. So that motivation is liberating actually, whereas when we just put ourselves in the center of what I want to achieve and I can do it, that can-do attitude is actually needs to be subservient to what Krishna can do. And when we tie to Krishna, just like we talk about that, a village boy riding a bicycle catches a car or a truck passing by, then he achieves the speed of the truck on his own. How much faster can he go? And Prabhupada also gives the example of, like in Dhruva Maharaj's story, he gives the example when Dhruva Maharaj was meditating. At some point he withheld his breath for 10 days or whatever he could, and at that time the whole universe actually, universal breathing stopped, and nobody could actually breathe because Dhruva Maharaj was practicing that severe meditation on the Supreme, and his consciousness was completely connected to the Supreme. So his power became like infinite. So we limit ourselves by thinking that okay, I can do it on my own. We can actually do much more by thinking that Krishna can do anything through me.
I was going to say something in my mind, just slipped off. Just give me a minute. Yeah, I think you covered it. That we do have to. I was going to say that. Yeah, this is something that I've thought about. Such a lot, because we see like two kinds of surrender. You see Draupadi's surrender, where she her surrender was that Krishna wanted to see and show that you're actually helpless without my help. And so her surrender was just putting her hands up in the air and saying, just, oh Govinda, hey Gopal, please help me. And then Arjuna's surrender is that he's sitting on this chariot with Krishna right there, and he's not depending on Krishna, right? He is actually fighting the war. He's shooting the arrows, and in fact, when he becomes a little lax, then Krishna gets really angry with him. He says, what's wrong with you? So, you have these two extreme cases, where in one case, Krishna doesn't step in because he wants Draupadi to give up all action and just completely just depend on him. And on the other one, Krishna gets angry when Arjuna becomes lax and nudges him that, hey, you need to fight. And so now between these two extremes, like how do we know, right? How much we need to put our own effort. But it can be, at least, just from our own perspective, we have to, do our best. They say, right, you do your best and God will do the rest. So there will, as we practice Krishna consciousness and as we apply ourselves to offering Krishna the best of what we have, and we don't, just in the name of religion or spirituality, we don't just become lazy or like bums. We do our best, but then knowing that, Krishna has the fruits. But also, there might be times when if we are connected to the Vaishnavas and we are connected to Krishna, then we might also learn when it's time to say quits. When it's time to say, Krishna, I surrender, by letting you decide what you want me to do. So it's such an interplay between these two ends of the spectrum, and for that we need Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. And also, I guess the life has to be intertwined with our spiritual practices, because through that we'll get the higher intelligence at every step of our life. Like that can-do attitude needs to be, we need to remove the material covering from that can-do attitude. Otherwise we'll keep coming back. That's the fruitive mentality that Krishna talks about, this Hidriyaganti, this fruitive mentality that I control my destiny. We don't fully, we only have a little bit of control over our destiny. Who was that Angad, right? Who goes to Ravana's court, and then he says that no one can move my foot, right? And then everybody comes, the greatest warrior. I think even Ravana tries to come, right? Ravana can't move his foot. So devotees are not losers or weaklings, but their strength comes from somewhere else. And Prahlad Maharaj also, Hiranyakashipu was asking Prahlad Maharaj, where do you get your strength from? And Prahlad says, I get my strength from the same place that you get your strength from. So when we are connected with Krishna, our can-do attitude can become like, I can do anything. That's the real can-do attitude. Like Prabhupada, you see the example of Prabhupada, a 70-year-old man having 2 heart attacks and coming to the West and starting this movement. I mean, what kind of can-do attitude that is? I mean, that is just mind-blowing. So Krishna can make his devotees do things that they can't even imagine. So I think what it is that there's nothing wrong with the statement, I can do it. It's just that the I has to be in relationship with the big I. Big I. That's all. So I, and then maybe within brackets, I, because I'm connected to the big I, I can do anything. Krishna willing, and for Krishna's pleasure, I can do anything. I can do anything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, Prabhu.
Yes.
So my question is that when we are doing any service, does it matter? Is there a difference between the services? Like, for example, book distribution we are directly glorifying Krishna, or Krishna Katha is directly glorifying Krishna. But others, there are so many other services that is we are not directly glorifying, like organizing or managing something. So is there a difference? Because I do notice that, at least for me, when I'm directly hearing or chanting, or when directly hearing Krishna's name, it gives me more peace.
More peace.
But when doing other things, the effect is not the same.
Yes, that's a very good question. Prabhupada was asked this question by Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He was managing the lawsuit in Mumbai, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj was kind of feeling frustrated all day long. I'm just talking to the lawyers and going through the law books, and where is Krishna in all this? And should I just focus more on just direct and hearing and chanting? And Prabhupada answered that what you are doing is just like Arjuna was fighting on the battlefield. So sometimes it may feel like our direct chanting and hearing is giving us more satisfaction and peace, and the other things are not. But I guess that is the challenge, is that when we are doing those other things, we gradually start training our mind to think of Krishna. And that's what Krishna tells Arjuna, that tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yuddhacha mai arpita manobuddhi mame vashyasya samshaya. So while we are doing those other seemingly more like not straightforward devotional service kind of services, I guess we have to gradually train our mind in thinking of Krishna and remembering him and in those difficult times. And that's what we need to develop. And then what will happen is, even during chanting, then we can remember Krishna even more. Because right now it's kind of we kind of swing. Even in our chanting, many times we are not able to think of Krishna, right? And then the reason is because we are kind of not attached to Krishna right now, and so we have to bring Krishna into remembrance, even doing those difficult services, and that will be very pleasing to Krishna, and that will give us that empowerment to think of Krishna in any difficult situation of our life. So, like for example, if somebody is very sick, and how do we think of Krishna at that time? At our time of death, how do we think of Krishna at that time? Our body is not functioning, and then everything is in disarray. So we have to train ourselves in every aspect of our life to think of Krishna, and then that peace and that satisfaction that we are looking for will pervade throughout every aspect of our life.
Again, I think it's both things, just like Arjuna's surrender and Draupadi's surrender. There is a time for everything. So in one situation, Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight, and in another situation, Krishna wanted Draupadi to surrender, not fight, not act. So same thing. We act under the direction of the spiritual master, and if he wants us to study law books, then we study law books. Prematurely, if we think that I can bypass that, right? So, and there will come a time when the spiritual master will say, now you sit down and you read, you study. Now is your time to now just go deeper. So the spiritual master will give us that indication when we have to act, and execute the will and the desire. And then if we have a desire for, like for example, Lakshman Prabhu was telling us, right, that there was this devotee who had a great desire to live in Vrindavan, and Prabhupada apparently told him that you first go and preach in the West, and then you come back. Then you will have the adhikar to come. So we have to, both things are required, because we cannot artificially or prematurely enter into this state. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati wrote this very famous bhajan, that what kind of Vaishnava are you? That you are sitting down for solitary bhajan, but your mind is engaged in Vishaya or material thoughts. So that's why, we have to work according to the direction of the spiritual master and become eligible and qualified and purify ourselves. And then when the time is right, then maybe, the spiritual master will give us an indication that now we can sit. But even when we are performing those seemingly activities of organization and management, we should never give up the process of hearing and chanting. Yeah. The two have to go hand in hand for management to be spiritual and for organization to be spiritual.
Because those difficult services, they force us to take more shelter of Krishna. Because during those management or organizational activities, it allows us to again detach ourselves from being a controller, right? We want to control everything, we want to do everything perfectly, but in spiritual organization and management we have to become detached, and at the same time we have to do our best. So that is something that we have to learn, and when we do that in a proper spirit of service, then we actually make great advancement, because we are able to cut so many knots during those kind of seemingly not direct devotional services.
Right.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you.
So I don't know, maybe we should move on, or if there's anybody.
What time? It's already 7. What time is it? 7:15, right?
Okay.
Yeah, we should do another verse.
Okay.
So let's hear from people we haven't heard from today.
Chaitanya, Rima, Venu.
Venu, Prabhu. Anybody?
I have a good question.
Oh
about
yeah,
the
self as the master. Let's address that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, I mean, kind of the obvious question here is why does Shukadeva Goswami use the term self here? Why is in the previous, in both the verse before and the verse after use Bhagavan, but why what does it mean to see self as master, and why are we just seeing Bhagavan as master?
Yeah, that's a good point. So here the self as the master, we should not take master means the ultimate master. Here the word master simply means that the self can achieve control over the mind and the senses and the false ego. The self is in the next verse you will see that the self is addressed as Prabhu, which again means master. So it simply means that right now the soul is kind of helplessly tossed around by the mind and the senses and the false ego, and the soul has become like a toy in the hands of mind, intelligence and false ego, and the soul is happy to become a toy or a servant of these mind and senses. Like Shama Bhakti was saying that I have been serving my senses for millions of lifetimes, but they haven't given me any respite or no reward. So it is saying that become a master of your senses. Basically, the soul is actually the master of the senses and the mind, and it should reclaim that original position. And then in that position, actually, you can become the best servant of the real master, who is Krishna. So that is the meaning of.
That's the meaning of the word Goswami.
Yeah, Goswami. That's true.
Yeah.
Mm.
It means the master of the senses.
Master of the senses.
Mm.
So it's basically saying become a Goswami.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chaitanya, go ahead.
I have nothing.
Nothing from your side today. Okay.
Anchita, anything from you?
Who?
Anchita.
Oh, okay.
Who's S?
She's not here today.
Okay, no problem.
Rima? And there's someone on iPhone also.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji and Mataji.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji and Mataji, I have a question that, like, not in the heart, is it the attachment in the family? It is that attachment is because of material bondage, and love that liberates us. So what is the difference between that love, like how to know we are like serving in our family out of love, or we are attached to our family? Because I feel there's a very thin line, and I usually get confused between what is love and what is attachment.
It's a very good question again, and the difference is really who is the enjoyer, right, and who is the proprietor of all those people that we are serving. And when we serve with this feeling that this is me and this is mine, right, that this is who I am and this is my husband, this is my child, and because they are extensions of my body, so naturally, I'm going to take care of them. Now, here is the thing, that when we start out in Krishna consciousness, it is natural for us to experience those feelings. The Prabhupada says familial affection is very natural, right? So it's natural for us to feel that affection. But as we progress, then we start understanding and we start seeing those relationships from a spiritual perspective, which means that now we no longer see them as just belonging to us, but we see them as parts of Krishna. We see them as spirit soul, and we serve them in that way. We love them in that way. How will we know that we are moving away from a material attachment to a spiritual attachment? Well, there might be many indicators. One is that our sense of control will be that much less. Because now we are not in a mood to exploit those relationships or control those relationships for my aspirations, my enjoyment. Rather, I'm in a mood to support and assist and serve that person for that person's well-being, right? So there will be a kind of detached love there, which means that there is a lot of love, but there is nothing in it for me. I don't have my stakes. It's like I have a business, you know, and I'm doing a business with some other partner, and I have heavy stake in that business, right? So what does that mean when I have heavy stake in that business? That means the profits are mine, and when the losses come, then I get thrown in a state of complete like disarray. That, oh my God, there's loss. But then say if I'm a consultant, right, or if I am acting as a servant or an employee in a business, then whether the profits are high or there are losses, it does not directly affect me as much, right? So our love will have that quality of not wanting anything out of it for myself, but rather just truly wanting to take care of them for their well-being. And in that way, I have also found in my own journey that we can actually love more completely and wholly. Because so many times, and most of the times in our relationship, material relationship, one of the reasons why we struggle is because it's always about me, right? It's always about, you should do this because it will make me happy. And why are you not doing this? Don't you see that this makes me so unhappy, right? So again, I am at the center of that relationship. But when we replace ourselves, then we put Krishna there and we place that living entity in relationship to Krishna, then I'm simply a facilitator. And then I'm no longer the primary beneficiary of that relationship. I don't know, Rima, if that helps.
It really helps, Mataji.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I don't know if there is anyone else, and that's again, it's practice, right? And it'll come if you simply just take up this process of chanting the holy names of Krishna. If you take up this practice with great sincerity, then all of these other things, all of these other adjustments will automatically come about. That is the power, because just like Vivek Prabhu mentioned, right? It's beyond the purview of our intelligence. So we have to approach higher power. And so when we start chanting the names of Krishna, then what happens is that Krishna himself becomes personally invested. So when it becomes his investment, then we start realizing it is Krishna's investment. It's his business. It's not my business anymore. So then naturally I become free of that anxiety.
And the other thing that is that because of our attachments, they are not affecting our sadhana and our services to Krishna. So that's another practical. Of course, there will be some good days and bad days where things will get affected. But overall, on the average, our sadhana and our services to Krishna should not get affected. And they get affected, that means we are letting our material attachments affect them. And that's something that we can correct and adjust.
Okay, so maybe we'll stop here and then we'll see you guys tomorrow. Sorry for those that joined for Bhakti Shastri. We are really sorry about today, but yeah,
we'll continue with next week.
Yeah, we'll continue next week.
Alright, so have a wonderful evening and then we'll see you tomorrow.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Or
Narsimha-arti. Yeah, let's do the Narsimha-arti.
Hare Krishna. Oh.
Who wants to do that?
Let's see who else is there. Just give us a... Does Avi want to sing? Who else is there? Let's go around. Keshav already sang.
Keshav already sang.
Okay. Shuchi, I don't know if your kids or... Suhani, did Suhani sing? I don't know if she wants to.
Suhani sang once.
Okay.
Arav can sing.
Or even if one of the adults want to sing.
Yeah, that's fine. Just quickly volunteer. Or I'll pick somebody. Rima, you want to sing Narsimha Arti?
Sure, Prabhuji.
Okay, go ahead.
Namaste Narasimhaya